Welcome. We are back. Another sound design hangout in the new location. And I'm realizing talking straight ahead is better than cocking my head and then moving. So maybe that just means I need to get into the good stuff a little bit sooner and less talking. I wanted to play around with some found sound field recordings. You know, some not just anything you would record with an audio recorder or like your phone, but specifically like an environment, like an atmosphere, which is basically like white noise, like to some degree, and processing that like I would white noise to get a very pleasing atmosphere that can be played for a long time. I was thinking about doing that, but also building off the last Sdho, because I've been having a lot of fun playing with those grooves. But most importantly, and I think this is where we're going to start today, but adjusting the velocities and basically creating our own groove. But creating, I guess you could say, a groove that is going to be kind of like a go-to one you can almost use for everything. And I think that's where we're going to start. And then we'll get to the... Actually, we'll do an atmosphere first, because then we can play the atmosphere while we do the setting up of the groove and the velocities, because when that's happening, there's really not going to be music, and I can just put a piece of music to play. But I think maybe it would just be better to do it this way, because when I work with Ableton, I try to make it be as musical of an experience as possible. So for this, we're going to insert an audio track first. And under these categories, this is all like Ableton stuff. And then when you have these places, well, it's some Ableton stuff, but then it's also stuff that you can just add. So like Ken's sounds. These are all like folders that are on like my desktop, but like found sound, and I've actually put in a lot of new ambiances, because I've been doing a lot of work, one of the things I really like to do, especially when I like get sick of listening to a lot of the same like ambient music that I listen to, it's almost like I need to listen to like white noise. And I mean white noise that's been like crafted with like filters to really get the sound I want. And you know, a lot of sounds like just walking outside, what it sounds like at a lake. It's kind of like ambient as well. Now, if there's like birds and stuff like that, well, then clearly someone's going to be like, oh yeah, there's birds. But really what I want is just something that I can, plop into Ableton and just create like a very pleasing sound texture that I can either have on when I'm like working, researching something, or just like hanging out. So I recorded a lot of these things just with like my iPhone. So I'm just going to, it really doesn't matter. See, like, but I want something that like, look at this, right? You know, it just looks like sound. So I'm going to click warp, and I'm going to click loop, and I'm going to push play. So I want to see what I want, if I want to use this, and if there's any annoying parts. Like, look at these over here, because I want it to be like consistent. Like, I don't want too much. Yeah. So I'm going to bring this in. I'm also going to zoom in here, see where we start, if it starts kind of at like a zero crossing. Let's see how this loops over. Yeah, not bad. So I'm going to push Shift Tab right now. And I have an EQ8 and a compressor and a limiter on every channel because like I use an EQ, a compressor, and a limiter on every channel. So this is my default. So on this EQ8, I'm going to activate pole 8 here, and I'm going to start bringing this in. Going to move it back up. So right now we're cutting out all these high frequencies because I don't want... I'm happy that all of this is here. I don't know if like it was like raining or if this is just like the higher amount of the wind. By the way, if you hold shift, you can do it a lot slower like this. I'm going to lower the Q. Okay, and I'm going to go into here. By the way, you can drag these little poles or you can move them like that. I want to cut out any lows that like aren't necessary. And then because the muddiest range is kind of like this 200 to 400, I just want to see if anything sounds annoying and abrasive. Like, yeah, this sounds bad up here, but I'm cutting out a lot of that. I'm only boosting to hear like if there's anything that's horrible, and I'm more concerned with this like low mid range. There. So I'm gonna turn down this gain. Sometimes I like to sweep it, see if it sounds better. If you actually hold down Option, you can do that with the Q, which is really good. So then I'm going to add a little compression just to kind of even out the volume. Ratio. You don't really need a high ratio because if you look, there's not really a whole lot going on here, you know? And that's good. Like I just want... So like this sounds okay. This is like kind of boring, you know what I mean? It's pretty boring sound. So the next thing I normally do is I go to reverb, and I'm going to go to the hybrid reverb. I'm going to drop it after the compressor because I'd rather the compressed version come in. And I actually want to experiment with just with the convolution reverb. So all of this got grayed out because the hybrid reverb blends an algorithmic reverb, which is like a reverb that's all like mathematical based, versus a convolution reverb, which like seeks to mimic like actual sounds. So because this is like a large outdoor area, I want like a larger reverb. So I want something that's like big. It's like halls is big, bigger spaces I'm assuming is big. Let's just do halls. And you might say, oh, all of this is grayed out. That sucks. Like, what the hell? Well, that's because the convolution reverb is just these areas here. So I like a long decay because I want it to be big. Dry, wet, you always want to play with because dry means nothing. Wet means it's... So I want to make it like sound less like you're hearing lawnscapers. I always... Landscapers, lawnscapers. But halls, let's try some different halls. I'm just going to click through and see if one sounds extra good to me. Just clicking with the down arrow. It's kind of interesting. I don't like this sound. I almost like it more dry wet. Let's actually go in here and go to parallel. So we're going to bring this guy back, the algorithmic reverb. I want to keep it on dark hall because I want a big one. And where are we? Decay. I want a lot of decay. I'm going to keep this blend between the two. Parallel basically says our sound is being fed into this convolution reverb, and the sound in parallel is being also fed into this algorithmic reverb. If it was serial, it means it gets fed into the convolution reverb first, and then that sound then gets fed into the algorithmic reverb, and then that's what you hear. I don't know why you would really want that, especially because this convolution reverb is so big, but normally I just switch between the two, and I'm like, okay, does this give me like a better sound? It's all about like listening and turning, and then like, oh, this sounds extra good to me. no one just goes in and turns all these knobs and then clicks play and they're like, yes! You know, like you play it. I'm going to go to this EQ section and yeah, it's fine. I'm going to click pull 4 because sometimes when like high frequencies get reverberated, it sounds really bad. In fact, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I listen to like ambient music, like I don't want high frequencies. Like I feel like I can't relax into them. So a lot of the things I do, a lot of like sound design things I do is kind of like my own personal thing. So I'm going to double click on this, which you can also, if you're down here, shift tab. And I want to click this ×2 and see it's going to double this and time stretch it. That's why I have this warp mode on repitch. That's just my favorite. I'm going to times it by 2, see if I like. It's going to be deeper and slower, which is going to possibly give it a much better feel or not. So let's click this ×2. Didn't sound that much different. Let's do it again. I'm going to stop it and start it again. Hear that trail off? That's because we have the reverb there. Push play. That was weird. Did you hear that weird, like, high pitch? Like, wow. It's weird. Because when you, like, time stretch audio, you'll hear things that you didn't hear initially because of this sonic sorcery we got going on. I'm going to push shift tab. I'm going to go to get an auto filter. And again, I feel like there's, like, too much high frequency. I may just not like this sound, but I just wanted a little bit of a texture before I start working in some things. Yeah, just too much high frequency. Like, I like the way this sounds. But I want it to be a little bit louder. Although you're not supposed to boost the limiter. I just need volume, so that's why I'm doing this here. Take the drive down a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so we're going to now jump into the MIDI realm here and kind of build off what we were doing. So if I double click into one of these clips here, and I'm mostly concerned with the velocities. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I want to be in 16th notes, and I'm going to go to C3, and I'm going to push B for the pen tool, and then I'm going to push Command D on a Mac and duplicate. These are 16th notes. This is 1 bar. And what I'm curious about playing around with right now, not curious, but what I'm going to be playing around with is velocity. Now, velocity is down here. If you're not seeing that, check this triangle. This triangle shows the velocity and then the brand new to Ableton Live 11 chance, which we will get into another time. So we've got our we're gonna skip chance for now. That's really cool. But velocity. So all of these notes, they're all if you push Command, you see they're all 100. You can highest velocity is 127, lowest is 1, and what velocity means is, regardless of, like, we're in the MIDI realm right now. What velocity means is a velocity of 127 was, pretend there's a drum and someone is going to strike the drum. The max velocity, 127, is the hardest the person could hit it, or the hardest anyone would want to hit it. Think about like a hypothetical drummer. And then a velocity of 1 is going to be like the softest hit. And when you are trying to make music, if you want there to be variations, because when a person hits a drum or plays a keyboard or plays a piano or plays any instrument or just plays their MIDI keyboard, if every note sounded the same, like there wasn't any variation of like how it was being hit, so velocity, it would sound very boring. So I'm going to stop our little texture here. And I want to push Command Z to get this guy back at 100. So they're all at 100. And right now this is our MIDI track here. And just because I would rather play with Wavetable, because it's just my favorite synth in Ableton. I think a lot of you might feel that way as well. I'm going to record enable. It doesn't even really matter because I'm just launching a clip. But all of these velocities are the same. So when I click this button, everything is going to sound the same. Every hit. Okay. Shift tab. I'm going to go to semitone, shift down arrow. I'm going to lower this volume. It's the master volume. Now I'm going to push stop. Okay. So over here in MIDI, so see how we had these velocities? Again, I'm going to push shift tab. See how we got these velocities that we can edit for every note. By the way, the way you edit them is literally you come down here to velocity, and when it highlights, it says, you know, you've got this note. And I'm just dragging up and down. Now, simultaneously, or while I do that, if I were to be in this MIDI note area and like either select a note or just like drag, if I hold Command over this note, I can then move it like that. So those are like the two ways you would do that. So these velocities basically say that every time I launch a clip, when, let's say this first note, when this first note plays, this first note, and well, every note, has a velocity of 100. So if you come down here, you see it says 100. If I come up here and I hold Command while I hover over it, it says 100. Now, it doesn't really matter that there's velocity information there if our synthesizer is not set up for velocity. So right now, there is velocity modulation, so you can see velocity down here, of 50 for amp. So we can go up to 100, we can go to 0, which would mean none, we can go negative, which is reasons why you would want to do negative. But this is where you set velocities in Wavetable, and we're in Wavetable, so all we're caring about is Wavetable right now. So this is where you set velocities. So for instance, we're turning velocity off. So right now we have no velocity. So if we play these notes, they'll still sound the same. Okay, just like before. Seeing what Chonky was doing. So let's come into here to the second note, right? So if we select the second note and we either hover in this editor and hold Command and move it down like this. Let's move it down and let's highlight these two and just do Command D to duplicate, just to do this quickly. So high velocity, low velocity, high velocity, low velocity. Click play, and let's see what it sounds like. Same. Look. Same. It's because we have no velocity. Amp is the volume. So listen to what happens when we turn this up. Even though all of these notes are completely on the grid, it sounds like there's like a swing to it, right? I'm not really sure why velocity has to be up so high to get this effect. Wavetable is an interesting one because sometimes, like in a lot of the other synths, if you put like the way this sounds, almost sounds like if you did it at 33 out of 100 on a lot of other ones, but that doesn't really matter. Also for velocity, let's do pitch, just to experiment. Hear that? Now that's no different than if we, moved one of these up. So each time, so it's modulating the pitch, but I don't want the pitch to change. I just wanted you to hear that. And let's push a pitch. Anytime you do any modulation with pitch, it's like so crazy that like you have to do like the smallest amount. So let's crank this up. Someone will find a creative use for this. I'm going to hover over this and just push delete, go back to 0. Now, the interesting thing to do is oscillator 1 position, because right now, what you do in wavetable is you morph through this wavetable. But I'm going to keep it here, and I'm going to modulate this velocity. So the higher the velocity, the more harmonics gets let through, so it sounds pretty good, right? So if you did 100, it's going way up. See, notice how it doesn't, this 100 should actually make it go all the way up, but it doesn't. I'm not sure why. It doesn't really matter, though. So basically what you can do is you can do that, but here's the thing, though. That's kind of boring, and what I want to do is I want to take that a step further. So this first one I'm going to put higher. The second one I'm going to put here a little bit lower. The third one I'm going to do somewhere in between. The fourth, maybe a little bit lower because it's, I believe, the weakest beat. And then I want beat 2. See how you see these beats up here? So this is beat 1, and then it's 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, which is a quarter note. And then we start on this beat 2, which is starts the 16th note again. So you would normally have this be, whoops, I don't want to do that. We'll get into that later. But I want this to be high, and then I want this one to be lower than this one. I kind of just want, because so these beats, like beat 1 is stronger than all of these. Beat 2 is stronger than all of these following ones. And the ones in the middle, like these guys, they are stronger than these ones. So if you study that, you'll realize why this gives a pretty good sound. So I'm going to highlight all of these and push Command D to duplicate. And now let's hear what this pattern sounds like. It'll sound even better. Now to take this further, to take this further is I like to select some of these lower ones. And if I hold down Command and drag, see what these do, it's giving me a velocity range of 19. Now these top ones don't have it because I like them I don't want them to deviate too much. But these ones where I did this, that says each time you play this note, you can either play this initial velocity, which is 53, or you can randomly select a different velocity up to 19 points above it. So it might play 53, it might play 63. I don't know why you can't set it to where it plays above and below, but that's why I like to do it for these guys. You can certainly, take it. Well, I'm adjusting all of these together right now. So it's going to be a little bit more rhythmic because for the ones that are highlighted, there's going to be some randomness thrown in there. So it sounds like real, you know what I mean? So that sounds really good. And what I want to say is this sort of movement here, that's kind of... so if you play like drums or percussion, or maybe you play any sort of instrument, when you're like hitting along notes, your body just sort of instinctively accents certain, I don't want to say notes, but rather beats. Like when we play in this rhythmic realm, they're really known as like beats, so if you zoom in here, you can see like, this is 1, this is 1.2, 1.3, meaning like beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4, and it's got these divisible beats in between. And some of them they just get played with more accent than others when someone plays. So this is kind of how it goes. And so what we can do, and I don't know if you've seen this little guy down here, this groove pool, is that we can actually right click on here and go extract groove. And I'm gonna take this and I'm going to rename it to, I don't know, Sdho 17 groove. Which if you click this, you can save it to your presets. But let's click play. Well, first of all, let's come down here and I'm going to minimize this as well. And I'm going to insert a MIDI track. And I'm going to throw this groove on here and see if it works. Yeah, see, we've got our notes, we've got this. So like we don't have to draw this every time because this is a pretty common pattern that gives a really good feel. It's on the 16th notes. Yes, it is. And that's something we'd want to use. So if we click this little guy up here, you know, I'm going to push return. We've got our little groove up here. And so that's always there for us. So it's a good starting point. So if we wanted to like, I don't know, we wanted to come in and we wanted to like adjust, let's say analog. We threw analog on here and we clicked play. First of all, take some of this frequency out. Now what we want to do is we got these like wonderful velocities, but we won't hear velocities unless velocity is checked. So let's come into this frequency tab, or excuse me, filter tab right here. And where's velocity? Okay, velocity is right here. It's at 0. Okay, so no velocity. And see amp is at 4. Now let's put it down to 0. This has a slider of all the way up 8, all the way down 0, and we can't go negative. And then if we go to this volume here, are there any velocities to be set down here? No, I think in analog, the only velocity you have is the amp, which is volume, and then the frequency, which will be how bright. So brighter notes will be up here, darker notes will be down. Right now we have no velocities. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come into this amp and we're gonna click play. Everything's the same, right? How do we know? Well, we can use our ears and turn this up. But what if you said, hey man, my ears aren't that good, or I'm training them. They will be good someday. Well, there's something you can do. If you insert a MIDI track, record the MIDI from analog, because that's what's playing. Make sure we're on post effects. I don't think it matters in this case, but just leave it there. And if we click record, and we click in any one of these spots, we double click. So we do have velocities. The only thing is that it's because there's velocities here, but there actually is no, the actual volume isn't changing because we don't have an amount. So that was actually not a good example. I wanted to show that they were all going to be flat. So if I actually, to illustrate this better, if I clicked C3 and I'm going to just bring the velocity up here and I just did Command D. See how they're all the same right here? And then I were to do this. See how they're all, it's going to record what is playing out. So yeah, it does record everything. But even though we have these velocities, if I push play, nothing is happening because there's no velocity set. So if we turn this up, we're in amp. Each time there's a lower velocity, shift tab to go back in, each time it's lower, the volume is lower. So higher volume's up here, and that's what gives it that sound. And what's really interesting, if you're like, well, okay, listen, dude, like I'm good with programming MIDI. I'm good with even programming velocity. I get that, but I want there to be I want there to be little like timing adjustments like that. And, I don't want to be going in and having to move these ones. Well, the same kind of theory actually also applies. The same kind of theory also applies with these. The lesser beats are typically played slightly behind, whereas the beats that would either be either on the 1, the 2, the 3, or right here on this middle beat, which would be the and or because it goes 1 and 2 and 3 and which is eighth notes. If you did Command 2, you can move this up. Also, if you right click, you can choose the division. So that's just something to note. Hope I'm not giving you too much. Most of the time on this channel, we focus more on long notes. So when you modulate longer notes, velocities aren't that important, and you modulate more through LFOs. But when you are trying to modulate like lots of notes, like in a staccato fashion, you actually do that through velocities. And so that's something we don't focus as much on here because I don't make that kind of music as much. So things we can do, let's play this pattern. And let's go into this groove pool here, and here's our groove. Now watch what happens. So timing is 100. Let's see what happens when I put the timing to 0. Oh, well, I think we have to select the groove down here. Push the timing up. Push it to 0. I don't know. I think it matters. I think this actually really only applies when everything is set the same, but I'm going to click random and see if it does anything. So that can give you some nice variation. The random actually does offset these notes, although you won't see it. So if I clicked, so hear that? And then we can get extra velocity randomization as well. So if I took this clip here and I pushed Command D for duplicate, which you could also just do by selecting up here duplicate, I'm going to stop this clip, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to bounce this in place. I want to flatten it to show you that this is actually moving these things. But because I'm recording over here, I think I may have to stop recording in order for it to like process, because I want to like bounce this in place. Let's see, am I able to do that? Just to show, maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe that's overkill for this hangout. Someone's just like, shit, I didn't think we were going to get that deep into velocity and grooves, which is an area that's very important. Let's see here. What's a good way to do that? I think I got it. I'm going to delete this, and I'm actually going to check this out. I think we'll be able to see it better here. Let's put the random up really high and see if it really starts messing up the locations of these guys. And let's like crank up the velocity. See these velocities? So let's see if it's really working. Is it really going crazy? Because you should be able to see it here. I'm going to zoom in. It should do that. It's like so like messy like that. Let's check it out. So let's zoom in here towards the end, and let's see. Are these off the grid? Yeah. See how these are like slopping off the grid? So this is moving it, just in case you were curious. So that's a great way you can get it. So I'm just going to delete. Do I need to delete it? What's in here? It's wavetable. Let's push this play. What do we have here? So I hope this like gives you some ideas and you like understand this better. So yeah, you can just like remove this. You could, let's say like go back into our wavetable track, and you can be like, all right, let's come over here. Let's click a G note, hover, move up the velocity a little bit, although as we'll see, it doesn't matter. And let's just Command D and duplicate it across, get some 16th notes going. And what do we want? Groove. We want a groove. So where are grooves? Well, let's go find that groove we made. Now, you won't find it in here. This is just where it is after you activate it. I'm going to bring this down. So where do we go? Well, that was if we click on grooves, it's automatically added. What do we call it? Do you guys remember what we called it? I think SDHO. These are all the grooves. SDHO 17 groove. So let's drag this in here. And let's click play. Nothing. But look what happens once we add this groove. So this basically says this is a groove that you can add if you want, and it'll be applied 100% on 16th notes, which is what we want. We can change it down to 8ths. But it won't actually take effect unless we come down here to groove and click SDHO 17 groove. But I'm not hearing it, are you? So let's go in a wavetable. We do have velocity, so why are we not hearing this? Yeah, that's weird. I'm gonna turn this off. Okay, so if I drag this SDHO groove in here, we got it, right? So this is supposed to be applying the SDHO groove to, I'm going to call this flat, because all of this stuff is flat here. So why would we not be getting this groove? Because we added the groove, right? So like, for instance, here's other ones. Soca accent, 16ths man. Soca, maybe it's like calypso or something like that. Some type of Latin American percussion. So if I go down here and I click play on flat, and I go to soca, hear it? And why is that happening? Well, because if we drag this soca, that's the velocity profile. And if we go to SDHO 17, here's the velocity profile, which is weird because if I go back into here, and again, it's the one that has the green flame. If we took soca accent away and put it on SDHO 17, it's not playing any of it. So I don't know if like it needs to restart or something, but yeah, that's kind of weird. I don't really know why. You know, soca, we got it. SDHO 17 groove. Don't really know why. That's kind of weird. I created another one, the 222 groove, of course. Let's see if it gives us 222 groove. I don't know. That's so weird. Because look, it's not applying it to these velocities down here. I don't really know why. You know, it's supposed to do that. It's weird because I mean, who knows? That could be a thing. It doesn't really matter because if we were like, oh, dude, whatever, I want my SDHO groove. This is crazy. You would just come down here and yeah, just drag your SDHO groove into any MIDI clip, you know, and now you got it. So click play. It's too deep. What do? Make sure you're in here, push Command A to select all, Shift up. And then you can just add velocity. Take the frequency down. Move it up here. Let's get a different wavetable. Lower the frequency. And you literally can just let it play and just tweak these velocity values so they sound good. Hold down Shift while you drag for finer control. Let's even check out the warps. See, it's giving it more bass. That's how I approach these warps and these folds, is I don't think, oh my god, what is it doing to my sound? I just think, does it give me what I want? Like this, so look at warp at 39%, I'll put a 0. I like that. Play some of this resonance. Even give some extra velocity modulation to resonance. Too much frequency, it's too bright. I'm actually going to go into audio effects, EQ and filters, auto filter. And with this low pass, just take some off. Go into, it's really dry. So let's throw corpus, see if we can get anything interesting. Go into here, MIDI from wavetable. Turn on frequency. Turn down this gain. Turn down the dry wet. Take it off beam, put on membrane. Take this transpose, shift down arrow. Oh, you can't do it. Bassy, bassy, bassy. Pipe. Go back to membrane. So yeah, there's a lot of things we can do. Actually, let's keep playing. Because now we're going to do our trick. Go to MIDI effects. Random. Keep it on add. I'm going to try out this alt mode. I want to know what this does. You can switch the behavior between random and cycle, round robin. I want to know what cycle is, because I normally just keep it on random. So right now, see the 0, it's only playing that note, but once we move it up, yellow means it's playing the note that's coming through it, and that means it's playing some random note above that may or may not be in scale. So if we go to scale, click this button, and let's do Birav. No, let's do Dorian sharp 4. You just click through. Let's do Hirajoshi. Now let's click this mode. See if it changes, like, because I'm wondering if this mode makes it like prefer notes that are closer to it. Sounds more musical, actually. And you can change the bass in case you want it like in a different key. And then we can go back and insert a MIDI track. Record enable. Click I/O. And what's playing? Wavetable's playing. So let's click wavetable. We want post effects. Monitor. In. Doesn't really matter, I don't believe. And then click in any of these. And it's recording all of the notes that's playing. See how it's mostly playing the C note, but every so often it like plays up. And it's actually also recording all these velocities. So we actually can go into wavetable here, and if we want more velocity, randomness, we can throw a velocity on here. I don't think it matters where you put velocity, and if you click velocity up, see how it's getting a little bit crazier? So let's click back on here. So see how it's like extra crazy down here? So we're just giving it like more spice. But what's also really cool is we can come into our wavetable track and go into the clip that's playing. And what I want to do is I want to take these guys. See how, like, okay, now I want to take these top ones and lower this thing down. So now it's taking different notes. And then I want to move this up, and I'm going to take us off velocity, and now we're on chance. So I want to highlight like every other note. Shift, I'm holding shift down. And I want to highlight every other note. And then I want to come down here and lower the chance. Which means 50% of the time play it, 50% of the time don't play it. So if we come back into this MIDI channel here, double click on this clip, you'll see there's now starting to be like little, I can't really zoom in, but you can see that there's now gaps in between where there like wasn't gaps before, because it's not playing every note. That's what's really cool about this. You have to come down here. So like these chance parameters, like 50% of the chance the time it's not playing it. So for instance, just to give you an idea, if I came in and took these and I moved them down, pretty crazy. So yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. I've just been doing a lot of this, so I'm pretty much just sharing with you guys what I learned. So hope you enjoyed that. Most of the time when I make music, I like ambient music, right? So like I want to hear something that sounds kind of like this. Because like I'm trying to work on something, I just want to relax. Sometimes I like more melodic sounds where like a bunch of notes are being held. Think like the majority of the stuff I've made. And these long notes that, that are played in a legato fashion, these are like chords, multiple notes stacked on top of each other, chords, they play for a long time, and you modulate them. To give an example, you modulate them in Wavetable by not in this MIDI tab, but the Matrix tab. It's saying, where are we applying the LFOs? Where are we providing movement over time? We're providing constant movement over time because these notes play for long periods of time. So we would want to be modulating the volume, the oscillator 1 position, the filter frequency over time. But when we have short notes, then we modulate the sounds by velocities, because when we're playing a lot of different notes, think about hands playing a keyboard. Some notes are going to be hit hard, some notes are going to be hit soft. I mean, if you sit down on an electric piano and you play soft, it's like very dull, but if you play hard, it's like very bright. It almost sounds like you're hitting a piece of glass, things will sustain longer. Certain higher notes might even be brighter, and that's when you start modulating by not just velocity, but by note. So, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. Random? Oh my God, what is this random parameter? I'm going to open this up. What is the random? Devices can be... I want to know random. I want to know what this random amount does. I don't know. I'll have to look in the notes. But in any event, hope you enjoyed that. I think that opens up a lot of stuff. If you're finding it hard to... Oh, I hope you guys can see Merlin back there. How are you doing? Hey, go. I hope you guys were able to see that... Because let's face it, I would venture to guess that nowadays your average person using Ableton probably is not using any instrument they play. I mean, maybe they've got a MIDI keyboard, and if you've got a MIDI keyboard and you're playing, you'll get velocities, you know what I mean? But if you don't, if you're working in MIDI at all, you need, you need velocities. Otherwise, it's not going to sound... what happened to all these velocities? Am I going? Oh, it's because we're on chance. You need to make sure you're in velocity tab. And so right away, it's not really. It's going to sound like very static, And so a lot of times they get discouraged because they're like, dude, I'm drawing these MIDI notes. They sound like crap. Or even when you start adjusting velocities, if it's the same note all the time, that's boring. So these are all ways to basically get a MIDI clip playing pretty much in a generative way because we're using chance, we're using variation, we're using, most importantly, randomness, using Ableton's random device, and then using scale to lock it in. We're using these grooves to move things off the beat, to put some randoms in here, random elements to velocity, and then using this velocity device to do more. You don't have to use all of this stuff, but it's just kind of good to know about these things. I think what's great about Ableton is that you're able to control everything from the ground up, whereas there's a lot of plugins, like I was talking about in the past SDHO, that like do everything for you, but allow you to customize, which is good if you want to get up and running. But if you really want to know, how would I do this from scratch? Because like me and maybe other people are like, listen, I want to have my hands on everything. So this just gives you some fun stuff. I'm getting tired of talking. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we will talk soon.